I had a call actually, it's very, very timely really, as I was thinking about this passage this week, from someone who started off by saying, oh, I'm from the student loans company, and I just need to take a few security details before we go any further. And my brain, I'm not the sharpest tool in the box, to be honest. I was like, hang on a second, I actually don't have a student loan at the moment. And then I kind of twigged that actually it was, something that you're all probably very familiar with, one of those scam calls, where someone's trying to sort of trick you into handing over personal information about yourself, no doubt because they want to defraud you or something. And actually that's what Paul is warning the Christians in Galatia about, this teaching, about this focus on performance that is coming from these teachers. You see it in verses 1 and 2, don't you? He says, you foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you? That's what it is, the language of bewitching, the language of a scam. He goes on to say, before your very eyes, Jesus Christ was clearly portrayed as crucified. I'd like to learn just one thing from you. Did you receive the Spirit by the works of the law or by believing what you heard? It's just as if, I guess if you were in the house with one of your relatives and you heard a scam caller, or you heard someone call them up and then you suddenly heard that your relative was like starting to get their bank details, you heard someone, give their PIN number or something over the phone, you'd be going, no, don't do it. And that's what Paul it feels like he's doing in this passage, isn't it? He's saying to them, look, just don't go along with these guys. They're trying to scam you out of things. And what he does is he reminds them in these verses about what happened to them. You can read about this in the book of Acts, chapter 14. You can read about how he brought the message of Jesus to towns like Iconium and Lystra and Derbe, that we talked about in Acts chapter 14. If you read that chapter of Acts, you see that people who knew nothing about Jesus, were completely outside God's purposes, when they heard the message that Paul was bringing about God, about Jesus, and in particular about him dying for them, their lives had been completely transformed. They'd come to become Christians. They'd come to know God for the first time. And that's what he's saying in verse 2. He says, did you receive the Spirit by the works of the law or by believing what you heard? And the answer to that question is supposed to be obvious to them. The way that they became Christians was by believing the message that they heard through Paul. It had nothing to do with the works of the law. That is, it had nothing to do with their own performance. Quite the opposite. In fact, the message that Paul brought to them, that gospel message that first came to Turkey, was that actually through our own performance we can do nothing to please God. That we cannot be right with him through our own performance. And that only through Jesus dying for us and paying the price for our failure to keep God's law can we be right with God and enjoy his blessing.